every relationship, whether personal or political, comes down to trust, history, and shared interests. Just like in therapy, where past experiences shape present choices, nations too carry their own histories into today's decisions. When we ask why is India teaming up with Russia and seemingly ignoring America, we're really asking about loyalty, security, and survival. India's choices aren't impulsive. They are rooted in decades of reliance, defense cooperation, and a search for stability in a world that often feels unpredictable. To understand this partnership, we need to look beyond surface politics and into the deeper emotional history between nations, the kind of history that America simply doesn't share with India in the same way Russia does. India's close reliance on Russia for its defense supplies is not a coincidence, but the result of decades of trust and consistent cooperation. From the early years after independence, India faced security challenges from both Pakistan and China. At that time, the United States chose to support Pakistan with military aid, leaving India searching for a dependable partner. The Soviet Union stepped in, offering India not just military equipment, but also strategic support in international forums. This built a foundation of reliability and loyalty that still influences India's decisions today. Over the years, Russia has become India's largest and most reliable supplier of arms. From fighter jets like the MiG and Sukhoi series to tanks like the T-72 and T-90 and advanced missile defense systems like the S-400, India's defense forces have been equipped primarily through Russian technology. This deep military cooperation has not only ensured India's defense readiness, but has also created an ecosystem where Indian military infrastructure, training, and logistics are strongly tied to Russian systems. Replacing or switching to completely new suppliers like the U.S. would take years, massive investment, and significant restructuring, something India cannot afford in an unpredictable security environment. Another factor is the nature of the defense deals. Unlike the West, which often attaches political or strategic conditions to military aid and sales, Russia has historically provided India with weapons on favorable terms, including technology transfers and joint production agreements. For example, the BrahMos missile, one of the world's fastest cruise missiles, was jointly developed by India and Russia, symbolizing a partnership that goes beyond buyer and seller. Such collaboration has strengthened India's defense industry and given it more autonomy than a purely transactional relationship with the U.S. might allow. In addition, Russia has stood by India during times of crisis. During the 1971 war with Pakistan, when the U.S. and China leaned toward supporting Pakistan, the Soviet Union openly backed India, even deploying its navy to counter U.S. presence in the Indian Ocean. These moments of solidarity created a sense of trust that is hard to replace, no matter how appealing U.S. technology or alliances may seem today. Nations, much like individuals, remember who stood by them in their hardest times. And for India, Russia has proven itself a reliable friend when others hesitated. For India, continuing this defense partnership is not simply about old loyalties, but also about practical realities. The majority of India's current arsenal is Russian-made, and spare parts, maintenance, and upgrades can only come reliably from Moscow. Shifting away would not only be expensive, but could also weaken India's security readiness at a critical time when threats from China and Pakistan are very real. While India is diversifying and buying from the U.S., France, and Israel, Russia remains the backbone of its military hardware. This historical dependence, rooted in trust and sustained through decades of cooperation, explains why India continues to team up with Russia despite growing ties with America. It is less about ignoring the U.S. and more about honoring a proven partnership that still serves India's security interests today. India's relationship with Russia is also deeply shaped by the question of energy security, which lies at the heart of any country's economic stability and growth. As one of the fastest growing economies in the world, India's energy demand is enormous, and continues to rise rapidly with industrialization, urbanization, and the needs of its massive population. For India, securing affordable and reliable sources of energy is not simply a matter of choice, but of survival. In this regard, Russia has become a critical partner, especially in the last few years, when global energy markets have been shaken by sanctions, conflicts, and supply chain disruptions. Russia is one of the world's largest exporters of oil and natural gas, and when Western nations imposed sanctions on Moscow following the war in Ukraine, Russian crude oil suddenly became available at steeply discounted prices. For India, which imports more than 80% of its crude oil, this was an opportunity it could not afford to ignore. By increasing its purchases of Russian oil, India managed to cushion its economy from the shock of rising global prices. The discounted energy not only kept domestic fuel costs under control, but also helped India maintain stability in industries like transport, manufacturing, and electricity, all of which depend heavily on oil imports. Beyond oil, India also looks to Russia for cooperation in other areas of energy. Russia has been an important partner in nuclear energy, supporting India's civilian nuclear program through the construction of reactors such as those at Kudankulam in Tamil Nadu. These projects contribute to India's long-term goal of diversifying its energy mix and reducing dependence on fossil fuels. Similarly, Russia's role in coal and natural gas exports to India has given New Delhi additional flexibility in meeting its domestic needs, ensuring that power generation and heavy industries have reliable inputs. Energy ties between the two nations are not purely transactional. They also reflect the strategic autonomy India wants to preserve. Western countries, especially the United States, often link economic cooperation with political conditions or expect alignment on global issues. Russia, in contrast, has historically provided India with energy and resources without pressuring it to adopt Moscow's foreign policy positions. This freedom allows India to act in its own interests rather than being pulled into the agendas of other powers. In a world where energy is increasingly weaponized as a tool of diplomacy and conflict, such independence is invaluable. Furthermore, access to affordable Russian energy has given India room to maneuver on the international stage. While the West has criticized New Delhi for continuing to buy oil from Moscow, India has defended its actions as a necessity for the well-being of its people. After all, a nation of one, 4 billion cannot compromise on affordable energy just to please other countries. By prioritizing its own economic stability over Western pressure, India has shown that its partnership with Russia is rooted in pragmatism rather than ideology. In the bigger picture, India's willingness to deepen its energy ties with Russia demonstrates that global politics cannot override basic national interests. For India, energy security is non-negotiable, and Russia remains a dependable partner in ensuring that stability. This is one of the strongest reasons why New Delhi continues to team up with Moscow, even while maintaining dialogue with Washington. India's foreign policy has always placed great emphasis on maintaining strategic independence. Unlike many countries that align themselves firmly with one major power, India has consistently sought to follow its own path, guided by national interest rather than outside pressure. This approach is deeply rooted in its history. From the days of Jawaharlal Nehru and the non-aligned movement, India has been cautious about becoming dependent on any single country or bloc, especially when it comes to security and foreign relations. In today's global environment, where the United States seeks partners who align closely with its strategic goals, India finds it important to keep a balance, and this is one reason why it continues to maintain strong ties with Russia. Strategic independence means having the freedom to make choices that serve the nation's long-term interests without being tied down by the expectations of powerful allies. For India, this is crucial because of its unique geographical position and security challenges. It shares borders with both China and Pakistan, two countries with whom it has long-standing disputes and occasional military confrontations. Depending entirely on the United States could create vulnerabilities, especially if U.S. policies shift or if Washington places conditions on military and economic cooperation. By keeping Russia as a partner, India ensures that it does not put all its eggs in one basket. Another factor is India's concern over the reliability of the United States as a long-term ally. American foreign policy has often been guided by its immediate interests, and its support for partners has sometimes changed when governments or priorities shift. India remembers how, during the Cold War, Washington chose to arm and support Pakistan, despite India's democratic system and its larger population. Even today, U.S. ties with Pakistan fluctuate but still exist, which makes India cautious about fully trusting Washington. On the other hand, Russia has maintained a more consistent approach toward India, giving New Delhi a sense of security that America has not always been able to provide. Strategic independence is also about flexibility in global diplomacy. India wants to engage with multiple power centers, the U.S., Russia, Europe, and Asia, without being forced to take sides. For example, while India is part of the Quad grouping with the U.S., Japan, and Australia, it also participates in organizations like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, where Russia and China play leading roles. This balancing act would not be possible if India tied itself too closely to Washington's policies. Working with Russia allows India to preserve room for maneuver, ensuring that it is not seen as a mere extension of American influence. Most importantly, strategic independence reflects India's vision of itself as a rising power. With its growing economy, young population, and expanding global influence, India does not want to be a junior partner to any country. Instead, it seeks to build partnerships that respect its autonomy and national interests, maintaining strong ties with Russia while also engaging the U.S. is a clear demonstration of this policy. It shows that India will not compromise its independent decision-making for the sake of aligning with one superpower. For India, teaming up with Russia is not about rejecting America, but about preserving the ability to chart its own course in a complicated and competitive world. This commitment to strategic independence remains one of the most important reasons behind India's balanced foreign policy. India's foreign policy in the modern world is shaped by the need to balance multiple powers, and this balancing act is most visible in its dealings with Russia and the United States. The global stage today is divided not only by economic rivalries, but also by shifting alliances and growing mistrust among powerful nations. For India, which sits at the center of Asia with two hostile neighbors and rising global ambitions, choosing sides outright is not a smart strategy. Instead, India pursues a path of geopolitical balancing, where it strengthens ties with both Washington and Moscow, while refusing to be pulled fully into the orbit of either side. This balancing strategy is visible in the way India manages its defense, trade, and diplomatic partnerships. On one hand, India works closely with the United States through forums like the Quad, which also includes Japan and Australia. This grouping is seen as a counterbalance to China's rise, and India benefits from access to advanced technology, intelligence sharing, and joint naval exercises with the U.S. On the other hand, India maintains a steady partnership with Russia, ensuring that its traditional defense and energy ties remain strong. By doing so, India signals to the world that it will not give up one relationship for the sake of another, but rather it will maintain multiple partnerships to secure its own interests. Geopolitical balancing also allows India to prevent overdependence. In a global system where alliances often come with strings attached, India avoids being cornered. The U.S. may expect India to reduce ties with Russia, but India has made it clear that it will not compromise on affordable oil or defense equipment just to fit into Washington's agenda. Similarly, Russia, while closer to China than before, continues to value India as a major partner because New Delhi maintains its independence from the West. This ability to engage both powers at the same time not only strengthens India's position, but also makes it a bridge between competing blocs. Another key aspect of this balancing act is India's role in global organizations. Through BRICS, where Russia and China play leading roles, India demonstrates its commitment to a multipolar world. At the same time, through the Quad and close ties with Europe and the U.S., India shows its alignment with democratic nations on issues of economic growth, regional security, and technology. This dual engagement reflects India's pragmatic approach, never leaning too far to one side, but always keeping options open. It allows India to gain maximum benefits without becoming trapped in other countries' rivalries. India's geopolitical balancing is also a form of insurance. In case relations with one power sour, the other can step in to provide support. For example, if U.S. policies toward South Asia shift in the future, India's relationship with Russia ensures that it is not left isolated. Similarly, if Russia moves too closely into China's camp, India's U.S. partnership prevents it from being outflanked. This careful balancing gives India flexibility, resilience, and diplomatic space to pursue its national goals. Ultimately, India's partnership with Russia, even while engaging the U.S., reflects this broader strategy. It is not about ignoring America or clinging to Moscow alone. It is about ensuring that India remains a strong, independent player in a world where power is constantly shifting. Geopolitical balancing is India's way of protecting its interests while still keeping doors open on all sides. When nations form partnerships, trust and reliability play as important a role as economics or military strategy. For India, one of the strongest reasons it continues to lean on Russia is the sense of dependability that Moscow has built over decades. Unlike relationships that shift with changing governments or fluctuating interests, India's bond with Russia has been tested in critical moments of history. Time and again, Russia has stood firmly by India's side when others hesitated or sided with its rivals, and this history has created a deep sense of loyalty and confidence that shapes India's choices even today. A defining example came during the 1971 India-Pakistan War, which eventually led to the creation of Bangladesh. At that time, both the United States and China supported Pakistan, with Washington even sending its 7th Fleet into the Bay of Bengal to signal its backing. India was in a difficult position, facing pressure on multiple fronts. It was the Soviet Union that stepped in decisively, signing a treaty of peace, friendship, and cooperation with India just months before the conflict, and later deploying its naval fleet to counter the U.S. presence. This move not only reassured India, but also demonstrated that Moscow was willing to risk confrontation with a superpower to protect its partner. Such gestures are not easily forgotten, and they remain etched in India's strategic memory. Beyond wartime solidarity, Russia has been reliable in areas where others placed conditions or hesitations. The United States, for instance, has often tied military or technological cooperation to political alignment, expecting countries to adjust their foreign policies in return. Russia, by contrast, has generally offered India military equipment, energy resources, and diplomatic support without demanding a change in its independent stance. This unconditional cooperation has built a sense of mutual respect. India can depend on Russia for critical supplies and support without fearing sudden policy shifts or sanctions based on disagreements in international politics. Trust also comes from the consistent flow of defense collaboration. India's armed forces rely heavily on Russian technology, not just because of affordability, but also because Moscow has always delivered, even during times of global tension. While Western countries sometimes hesitate to transfer advanced technology, Russia has been willing to share and even co-develop projects, such as the BrahMos missile system. Such collaborations show that Russia views India not merely as a customer, but as a long-term partner, investing in its growth as a military power. Another layer of reliability is visible in diplomacy. In global forums like the United Nations, Russia has often backed India's positions, whether on Kashmir or its aspirations for a permanent seat on the Security Council. Even when Russia has developed closer ties with China in recent years, it has not abandoned its friendship with India. This balancing reflects Russia's recognition of India's importance, as well as its consistent willingness to stand by New Delhi even when the geopolitical environment becomes complicated. For India, these repeated demonstrations of loyalty matter. Nations, like individuals, place great weight on who shows up in moments of crisis. The trust built with Russia across decades of wars, energy needs, defense cooperation, and diplomatic battles gives India a comfort level it does not fully share with the United States. While Washington is an important partner today, India knows that Moscow has proven itself reliable in ways that cannot be erased by shifting global politics. India's partnership with Russia is also guided by a larger vision of how the world should function, a vision that rejects domination by a single superpower and instead embraces the idea of a multipolar world. For decades, global politics was largely shaped by the rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union, and after the Cold War ended, America emerged as the sole superpower. But India has never been comfortable with the idea of one country dictating the rules of the international order. As a nation that values independence and sovereignty, India supports a system where multiple centers of power exist, giving smaller and medium powers more room to assert their own interests. Russia shares this worldview, and this shared vision forms a key pillar of their cooperation. For India, the multipolar world concept is not just theoretical. It has practical significance. If the United States remains unchecked as the dominant global force, it could pressure countries like India into aligning with its policies, even when those policies clash with local interests. By strengthening ties with Russia and other emerging powers, India helps create a balance that prevents any one nation from monopolizing influence. This balance gives India the space to pursue its own goals, whether in trade, security, or technology, without constantly worrying about foreign interference. In other words, a multipolar world gives India freedom of action, while a unipolar one limits it. Russia has also been vocal about opposing U.S. hegemony, and in this regard, it finds common cause with India. Platforms like BRICS, where Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa come together, reflect this shared commitment to reshaping global governance. These groupings aim to challenge Western dominance in institutions like the IMF, World Bank, and even the United Nations, where decision-making has long been controlled by a small group of powerful countries. For India, participation in such forums not only amplifies its voice, but also strengthens its identity as a rising global leader, one that is not dependent on the approval of the West. Another dimension of this vision is economic. By engaging with Russia, India can explore alternative financial systems, trade mechanisms, and supply chains that reduce reliance on Western-dominated systems like the U.S. dollar. This is especially relevant in times when sanctions are used as political tools. India's continued trade with Russia, despite Western restrictions, demonstrates its willingness to carve out an independent path in support of multipolarity. It shows that India is prepared to resist the pressures of a world order built around Western interests alone. This approach also helps India manage its own neighborhood challenges. In a multipolar system, India is not forced to choose between great powers, but can leverage relationships with different countries to balance threats from China and Pakistan. Russia's partnership offers India both military and diplomatic weight, while its ties with the United States and Europe bring technology and economic benefits. By keeping multiple options open, India positions itself as a central player in global politics rather than a follower. Ultimately, India's engagement with Russia is not just about immediate benefits like oil or weapons. It reflects a broader belief that the world must move beyond the dominance of a single power and instead embrace diversity in leadership and influence. A multipolar world aligns with India's identity as an independent, sovereign nation determined to shape its own destiny. By supporting Russia and resisting pressure to fully align with America, India is actively working toward this vision.